guys, it's Daniel here, back with a new review after a while. Sorry it's been a while, but I'm finally back, and today I'm here to review the newest installment in the DreamWorks animated series, Kung Fu Panda 4. So, in Kung Fu Panda 4, which is the fourth installment in the Kung Fu Panda film series, of course, we once again follow Po, the Dragon Warrior, who may not be the Dragon Warrior for long, as Shifu wants him to pick a new successor as he descends onto being the spiritual leader of the Valley of Peace. Which doesn't make sense because there wasn't a tradition involved with the Dragon Warrior, but whatever, we'll just, I'll discuss that later. But as Po tries to find a successor and also just wants to, doubt the whole thing, he meets a burglar, this fox named Zen, who he teams up with to take on a villainess shape-shifting sorceress called the Chameleon, who is on a goal to collect the shape-shifting powers and kung fu of every villain that Po has ever faced in the past. Which I guess definitely makes me call her the shapeshifter of fan service. Okay, so before I talk about what I think of this film in general, I should probably discuss what I think of the other films in the series. The first Kung Fu Panda film, I think, was really good. I think it really, changed, the status of, the not judging a book by its cover, because a lot of people thought, that the whole, Kung Fu Panda idea might have been dumb from the start, especially with Jack Black involved, but surprisingly, it turned out to be a very funny, really unique, and very, sad movie that really changed, the whole idea of a Kung Fu Panda and the idea of not judging by its cover, and it definitely made way to being one of DreamWorks' most popular products. The second Kung Fu Panda movie, I definitely think was even better. Now, granted, I will say that I did think the pacing was a little fast in that movie, but other than that, I think that movie was even funnier. It had a different director that definitely made it feel even more unique than the first film. It had a lot of character developments that wasn't explored in the first film, but did in this film. It had an even better villain in that movie, with Lord Shen, played by Gary Oldman, because Tai Lung, I think, was good, but not that impressive. But Shen was definitely way better, and it also had so much heart and so much, dark stuff for a DreamWorks kids movie, but I think it really made it better because it makes kids feel, intelligent and also trust their instincts to enjoy this dark kind of storytelling, especially with the whole thing about the identity crisis that Po faces in that movie. And I think it had really good development between him and Tigress, and it just came off as a really good movie that honestly kind of made me tear up a bit. The third movie, I think, was really good. I think it was really good. Not as good as the first two films. I don't think. I haven't rewatched the third film yet. I rewatched the first two, but not the third film. But I definitely remember it being really good because it definitely had, good colors, really funny comedy, although I felt like it really kind of made it overdone in that movie. A still good villain, but not the greatest, but he's voiced by J.K. Simmons, so that's good. A really great relationship between Po and his adoptive father, played by Bryan Cranston. And the ending, the climax of the movie, definitely made a lot of things come full circle. So now we have this fourth installment that was made 8 years later. And what do I think of it? I think it's decent. It's a decent movie. I think it was kind of a solid film, but I'm not gonna lie, it is definitely the weakest in the Kung Fu Panda series. Now, that's not saying it's bad, but I just think that there are quite a few things that I felt like could have been handled better and also just didn't really add up to me. But before we get into those problems, let's talk about what I liked. First of all, there are a few stylish things in the movie that I actually think was kind of well presented. The animation is decent. Not the best, but I did like a lot of the good colors in the movie because it definitely made it feel a lot of vibrant. The kung fu sequences, although I'll discuss them later, definitely made them look good because they do pick some really cool settings. The city that Po and Zen go to is very nice, and some of the scenes where Po has to use the Staff of Wisdom that was given by Oogway in the last movie, I actually think was very, vibrant and just colorful to look at. I will admit I like some of the colours in the third movie than in this one, but I still think that this movie definitely looked really well done in terms of like some of the colour statements, because the actual animation, it's okay, but I'll discuss them later. I will say that the one thing that definitely kept me engaged with the movie definitely is many of the comedy moments. Now, I will admit that many of the comedy moments didn't really land with me, but with the scenes that did land for me, it really landed, because there are a few moments in the movie that definitely got some good laughs out of me. Like some of the comedic moments with Lee and Ping, both of Poe's fathers, which, in my opinion, that whole storyline I thought was very entertaining, and I like that Lee has to kind of pretend to be a Panda warrior at one point. I was really glad that they brought him back. I was worried that they were going to just flat out leave him out of the franchise after the third movie, but I like that they brought him back because it means we get more Bryan Cranston, which is always great to see. Although, that one part where he tries to be intimidating in front of the people in the bar, it really felt like that Bryan was kind of adding a kiddier version of his iconic Walter White aka Heisenberg performance, which honestly is kind of my everything in that scene. The voice acting is also great in the movie. In fact, I'll honestly say that the voice acting is probably my favourite thing in this film, because definitely a lot of the actors seemed like they were really getting into their roles and really had a lot of fun with their roles. The two standouts in my opinion are, of course, in my opinion, the best one being, of course, the good old man himself, Jack Black, once again as Poe. You can tell that he clearly loves this character and he loves this franchise, which is why, even though the writing for the movie isn't that good, he would still come back and give it his all. Like, okay, this script might not be the best, but because this is Poe, I definitely will add everything I've got into the movie. And I could honestly tell that out of every actor in the movie, he was the actor that was having the most fun and was the most engaged in his role. With that said, I did hear a little line from Jack Black who said that this was the best Kung Fu Panda movie he's worked on. In terms of the actual movie, not so much. But if he meant it in the sense as in this is the most fun he's ever had in a production for a Kung Fu Panda movie, I could definitely tell, because he definitely seemed like he was having a blast behind the microphone. And I'm really looking forward to some of the other roles that he's getting in the future. The upcoming Borderlands movie, which I know a lot of people might not like, and the upcoming Minecraft movie, which, even though I felt like that should be animated, not live action, it will be interesting to see Jack Black being in a Minecraft movie that, honestly, I was kind of hoping for years to see a Minecraft movie, which would be kind of interesting. And the second standout performance in the movie, which, honestly, I'm kind of glad that this actor is in the movie, Viola Davis. Even though the Chameleon isn't the greatest Kung Fu Panda villain, I really loved the campiness that Viola Davis adds to the role, because I could definitely tell that she was having a blast recording her lines for this movie. She definitely has a uniqueness at playing comedic villains, in terms of, like, Amanda Waller in Suicide Squad, and that sassiness that she added in Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. But in this movie, like, I'm really glad that she got this role, because I don't think I ever saw her in a voice role before. I mean, I haven't seen How to Get Away with Murder or some of the other stuff. I've only seen a few things with Viola Davis, but I could definitely see why they definitely chose her, because this is definitely her breaking it out into voice acting, and you could tell that she's chewing the scenery playing this villainess, especially in some of the comedic scenes that she's in. And honestly, I'm actually kind of hoping that she gets more voice roles after this project. The music in the movie I also thought was really good, because it definitely kept up with, like, the China score from the other movies, as well as some of the music choices when in action scenes. But in my opinion, the best part of the music is the end song, which is Jack Black's cover of Britney Spears' Hit Me Baby One More Time. That version of that song is so infectiously catchy, and Jack did a fantastic job singing it. Although, at first I was like, what is that song doing in a Kung Fu Panda movie? But the fact that Jack Black, like the actor for Poe himself, is the one singing the song, in my opinion, just made it come off as even more catchy and cooler, especially in the scene that the song plays in, which is, like, during the end. But that song is so catchy that I've constantly gone back to listen to it again. Seriously, what is up with Jack Black getting cast as singing, like, main songs in animated movies? I mean, first it was Peaches in Super Mario the movie, and now it's this one? Man, they really pay him double the price just to sing those songs. And I will admit that this movie definitely has a good, like, message about, like, accepting change and getting worried about change. And sometimes it's good to take a leap of faith to, like, change things up a bit, or else it won't be as interesting as it was before. But the setup to get to that problem with Poe, I still think wasn't needed from the start. And with that said, now let's talk about the issues I had with Kung Fu Panda 4. And there are quite a few. Now, I just gotta let you guys know that this is just my opinions on Kung Fu Panda 4. There are those who didn't like the movie, and there are those who liked the movie. For me, I think it's okay, and again, this is just my opinion. So with that said, here we go. In my opinion, the biggest problem with Kung Fu Panda 4 is that it really feels like that with how long this franchise has been going with 4 movies, they really start to lose touch in what made the first 2 films great to begin with, because they did kind of have those problems in the 3rd movie, but in this one especially, they really feel like they're trying to downgrade what made the first 2 films good, and what worked in the first 2 films don't really work in this film, in my opinion, because the second film, it really started to push the boundaries, in terms of like a positive push the boundaries, for what animated sequels can do, in terms of like keeping the characters the same, but still giving them new adventures to go on, as well as developing their characters, and bringing out some good mixes of good comedy and good drama. In this one, the comedy seems to be taking center stage, while the character development and morals of the story plays second fiddle, because whenever we're trying to get, like, the adventure going, it keeps coming to a screeching halt so that a character can, like, make some, like, loud inner monologue about themselves, or make some constant quips and terms. And I guess I'll just get that out of the way. The comedy is really hit and miss in this film, because, yes, there are a few funny moments that, in my opinion, definitely made me laugh, but there's still many moments where I'm just like, oh my goodness, like, I get that this is for kids and all, but using the phrase it's a kids movie is not a good enough excuse to have, like, these, like, constant, like, slapstick moments that just seem a bit overdone and should have been used sparingly, because the characters are constantly moving around, bouncing around, constantly getting injured and hurt or making them fall over, but there's so many times you can make them fall over or get hurt before it becomes redundant. Plus, the film is way too reliant on callbacks to jokes from the previous films, with the whole, like, vase of, like, whispering warriors, or, like, I don't know, I might have got that wrong, but, like, the whole thing with the whispering warriors vase, that thing getting broke from the first film and the third film, it comes back in this one, and I felt like it really tried to, like, push on, like, oh, I already broke that twice, and they just do it again. At least in the third film, the reusage of that joke wasn't really overdone, and honestly, it was a good way to, like, show, like, Poe's father getting confused with that. In this film, it just seems like they're really overdoing the jokes, and it's a reason why I felt like this film felt like it was kind of like using similar beats from the previous films, which, honestly, is another thing I will mention. The conflicts and adventures, a lot of it really felt like repeats of the second film, because we have a villain that has taken over a city, we have, like, constant robbers in the city going around stealing things and getting chased by authorities, and we have, like, Poe getting introduced to a new city and saying it's the biggest city, when clearly Gunman City from the second film felt even bigger than that. We've seen them before in the second film, and in my opinion, the second film used them way better than they were in this film, because there's constant, like, familiarities and cliche storylines that, in my opinion, really felt like the movie wasn't feeling as unique as the first 2 films were. Now, I mentioned earlier that the animation is decent, but not the best, and the reason for this is because the character designs for the familiar characters that we've always known, in this film at least, came off a bit weird and not properly rendered enough. Like, especially with Mr. Ping. Like, Mr. Ping in this film, he looks good, but there's something about the way he looks that seems a bit off. It didn't seem like his character design was, like, fully rendered enough, because in the first 2 films, you can definitely see a lot of details in the animation, because the slapstick that they used in the first 2 films felt really restrained, but I think that's a good thing, because it makes the characters come off of alive, and made a lot of the action sequences come off as very hard and impressive. In the third film, they kind of derailed it a bit back because, again, because in that film, a lot of the scenes also came off as a bit weird and unrendered. And then in this film, they just do the same thing. And in my opinion, isn't animation supposed to evolve as the series goes on? In fact, what would this film have been like if they continued to like evolve from the first two films? And speaking of that, the action sequences as well feel a little bit underwhelming. I mean, it is like the familiar kung fu action as we've seen in the other films, but there's something about like the punches that just feel a little bit restrained and not fully like beating, like, oh, you can feel the pain. It's just like punching and kicking all the time. I mean, the most creative action sequence in the film is nearing the end with like the chameleon versus Poe and Zen, all that stuff, with the shape-shifting powers that we've seen in the trailers. And that scene definitely came off as very interesting because it definitely would come off as a good reflection in Poe's eyes as he faces off against what looks like the foes he faced in the past. But even that didn't come off as too impressive because it's just like the whole trope of, oh, remember this character? We're going to use him to that scene, and that came off as a bit annoying. And again, the punches and like the fights just came off a bit restrained for some reason. It's just not too impressive. And I think the biggest reason as to why a lot of the stuff in this movie didn't come off as impressive or as evolved from the first two films, as the first two films definitely came off as very impressive, is because of the way this film is written. Because the story of this film had a lot of things that, in my opinion, do not add up, and really made me feel like that the characters kind of acted out of character from what we've seen before. The biggest one, in my opinion, is that while I do appreciate that the film wants to show the lesson of change can be scary, but we'll never know, the setup to get to that problem for Poe, in my opinion, was really dumb. Because the entire moral of that story is set up from the fact that Master Shifu wants Poe to find a new Dragon Warrior. Why? Like, what? Like, how is that even a thing? Like, we've never seen that in the past few films. They never explored, like, in terms of, like, the film series. I mean, maybe in one of the TV shows they might have explored it, but in this film, because there are people who haven't seen the TV shows, are just watching the films, but in the film series, that is not anything like what Shifu or Oogway would do. In fact, I don't even think Oogway even expected this. I think this is something Shifu just made on his own. Like, what? Like, a new successor? Like, there's never been a successor! In the first film, Tai Lung was going to be the Dragon Warrior, but he didn't, and Poe took his place because he wasn't the actual Dragon Warrior. So there could only be one Dragon Warrior. Why does there need to be a successor? What, because Oogway gave him the Staff of Wisdom? He might be like the head of like the Valley of Peace spirits, but as the Dragon Warrior, not like just something else, like giving up his like. It's pretty hard for me to even comprehend what the hell's going on. Like, it really is. It made Shifu come off as kind of an idiot in this film. Like, it's great to hear Dustin Hoffman back as the character, but it felt like Shifu was kind of derailing back to what he was like in the first film, of not giving, like, the benefit of the doubt of, like, Poe as the Dragon Warrior. It worked for the first film because that's when Poe and Shifu first met, but it doesn't work for this film because it made Shifu come off as kind of selfish and kind of dumb in this movie, like, out of character, like, and, like, this whole thing where he's like, you could become more than who you already are. Isn't the whole point of, like, Poe being the Dragon Warrior is to embrace who he is and apply that to his kung fu and his, like, unique abilities? What? Why are you trying to make him more than that? Why are you trying to make him, like, not be, like, the Dragon Warrior? Like, what? This is dumb. This is really dumb. That's freaking stupid. It's really freaking stupid. There's even more story parts in the story that, in my opinion, came off as really, like, what? Like, the whole Poe's fathers being overprotective and worrisome. I thought, like, Ping was supposed to learn that, like, from the previous films, because the movie definitely kind of rebooted a bunch of the characters' arcs, with Poe being the bubbling buffoon again, and Ping being overprotective of Poe and, like, freaking out a bit. And because of the film being a bit hyperactive, the overreaction from Ping and Lee came off as kind of annoying and honestly not needed, because I thought they learned to, like, really, like, trust their son to be, like, very strong. And I get that they love him and all, but still though. And by the end, like, okay, let's talk about another thing of this movie. You saw in the trailers that a bunch of the villains from the previous films have come back, particularly Ian McShane coming back as Tai Lung. And yes, Tai Lung is in this movie. Again, that's not really a spoiler because it was in the advertisement, but again, he's not in a lot of the movie. But when he is in the movie, I wasn't very fond of what they did with him, and a lot of the other villains, I wasn't fond of what they did with them, because it is kind of cool to see Ian McShane come back, but Tai Lung and the villains came off as kind of out of character, because there's something that he says to Poe at the end of the movie, and that is no way in anything Tai Lung would do. And again, just like Shifu, it made Tai Lung come off as kind of a buffoon in this film. Like, that is not something of what Tai Lung would be. Like, what... Again, it's really kind of hard for me to comprehend what is going on. And the character of Zen, I think she's okay, but nothing too special. And Awkwafina's performance, like, it feels like Awkwafina's really getting typecast as some of these, like, comedic, like, supporting actors and characters in animated films. And honestly, I think her voice actually does fit with the character's design, but there are moments where I was like, yeah, that's clearly Awkwafina's voice. But yeah. So yeah, overall, guys, I think Kung Fu Panda 4 is okay. It's not the greatest, but it's not awful, because there are still some decent laughs, some good, like, character moments, and great voice acting, and great music. But the story really feels like it was, like, derailing from what made the previous films good, and it doesn't seem like it's evolving. It's kind of like going backwards a bit, and a lot of the characters kind of seem out of character, the action scenes aren't creative, and honestly, from what was great about the second movie, it feels like it made a big difference from, like, this movie, because they really derailed a lot of the things. So, I'm sorry if I don't seem too enthusiastic, but I do want to get this review out, and I do hope that you can understand that I do want to get this review out. And again, this is just my opinions on my thoughts on the movie, and overall, I'll give the movie a 3 out of 5. It's not great, but it's okay. But anyway, guys, what do you think of Kung Fu Panda 4? Do you like it? Do you hate it? And what is your favourite film in the Kung Fu Panda series? Let me know in the comment section below. More videos to come, and I'm Daniel, reviewing movies, TV shows, and doing videos, and saying, waha! Yaka! Yeah! And a lot of other Kung Fu sequences and words that Japbot would say. Till then, peace out, man. Ha ha! Okay, that just sounded like Mario.